That protein shake you just drank, your body might be turning it into sugar. I know. You've been told protein is the holy grail of fat loss. Eat more protein, burn more fat, build more muscle. But what if eating too much protein is actually working against you? Today, I'm going to show you the exact protein threshold where more stops helping and starts hurting your progress. And trust me, you're probably way over it. So here's the thing. Somewhere along the way, the fitness industry decided that protein is basically magic. Can't go wrong with protein, right? More is always better. I've seen guys chugging 3 protein shakes a day on top of chicken breasts at every meal, easily hitting 200, 250, even 300 grams of protein daily. And they're wondering why they're not leaner. Here's what nobody told them. Your body has a limit on how much protein it can actually use for muscle building. And everything beyond that limit, it doesn't just disappear. It has to go somewhere. Let me introduce you to a word that's about to change how you think about protein. Gluconeogenesis. Gluco meaning glucose, neo meaning new, genesis meaning creation. Literally, the creation of new glucose. Your liver can take protein and convert it into sugar. And before you panic, let me explain how this actually works because the internet has gotten this both right and very, very wrong. Here's the truth. Out of the 20 amino acids that make up protein, 18 of them, that's 90%, can be converted into glucose. Your liver has the machinery to do this. It's a real metabolic pathway. But, and this is a huge but, just because your body can do something doesn't mean it will do something. See, gluconeogenesis is what scientists call demand-driven, not supply-driven. Think of it like a taxi service. Just because there are 100 taxis available doesn't mean 100 taxis will show up at your house. They only come when you call them. Your liver only makes glucose from protein when your body actually needs glucose. It doesn't just flood your bloodstream with sugar because you ate an extra chicken breast. Researchers tested this directly. They gave people 50 grams of pure protein with 0 carbs and measured exactly how much glucose was produced. The answer? About 10 grams over 8 hours. That's it. Your body is incredibly tightly regulated. It's not going to let protein randomly spike your blood sugar. So if gluconeogenesis isn't the problem, what is? Here's where we get to the real protein trap. And it has nothing to do with protein turning into sugar. The actual issue is insulin. Yes, protein raises insulin. Not as much as carbohydrates, but it's not zero either. Research shows protein raises insulin about 50% as much as carbs, calorie for calorie. And certain proteins are worse than others. Whey protein? That stuff spikes insulin almost as much as white bread. And if you're combining protein with carbs, which most people are, that insulin response can increase by 200 to 270% compared to carbs alone. Now, insulin isn't evil. You need insulin. But insulin is fundamentally a storage hormone. When insulin is elevated, fat burning is suppressed. So if you're constantly slamming protein shakes throughout the day, you're keeping insulin elevated. You're keeping your body in storage mode, and you're making it harder to tap into fat stores. But wait, there's good news. Protein also triggers another hormone called glucagon. And glucagon does the opposite of insulin. It signals your body to release stored energy. When you eat protein without a bunch of carbs, insulin goes up a little, glucagon goes up too, and they kind of balance each other out. The ratio stays favorable for fat burning. The problem is when protein intake goes through the roof. When you're eating way more than your body can use, the metabolic math starts working against you. So how much protein can your body actually use? This is where it gets really interesting. The biggest meta-analysis on this topic looked at 49 studies with over 1,800 participants. They found that protein intake beyond 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight per day showed no additional muscle gain. Let me say that again. After 1.6 grams per kilogram, more protein did not equal more muscle. For an 80-kilogram person, that's about 130 grams of protein per day. The upper confidence interval extends to about 2.2 grams per kilogram, so let's call it 175 grams to be safe. But here's the thing. Most fitness enthusiasts I know are eating way beyond that. 200, 250, 300 grams. That's not muscle fuel at that point. That's just expensive calories. And what happens to all that excess protein? Your body oxidizes it, burns it for energy, which sounds fine until you realize protein is the most expensive and inefficient fuel source your body can use. It's like filling your car with champagne instead of gasoline. Sure, it'll technically work, but why would you do that? There's also a per meal limit that matters. Your muscles can only synthesize so much protein at once. The traditional research said about 25 to 40 grams per meal maxes out muscle protein synthesis. A newer 2023 study pushed this higher, showing 100 grams produced 30% more synthesis than 25 grams when measured over 12 hours. But even then, the researchers estimated only 25 to 35% of that protein actually went to muscle building. The rest, oxidized. The nitrogen gets stripped off, processed through your liver and kidneys, and the carbon skeleton gets burned for energy or potentially converted to glucose if your body happens to need it. Now, let me address the elephant in the room. What about ketosis? You've probably heard that too much protein will kick you out of ketosis. This is one of the most overstated fears in low-carb nutrition. A meta-analysis compiled data from multiple ketogenic diet studies and found that protein intake of 2.2 grams per kilogram does not prevent ketosis. Athletes eating that much protein maintain blood ketone levels of 1.8 millimoles per liter. That's solidly in ketosis. The correlation between protein intake and ketone levels was incredibly weak. Carbohydrate restriction drives ketosis, not protein limitation. So if you're doing keto and terrified of eating a second chicken breast, relax. That's not what's going to kick you out. But here's what will mess with your progress. Eating protein constantly throughout the day. See, every time you eat, you trigger metabolic processes. Insulin rises. mTOR gets activated. Your body shifts into building and storage mode. If you're eating 6 times a day because some bodybuilder from 1995 said you need protein every 3 hours, you're never giving your body a chance to fully shift into fat-burning mode. The bro science of eating every 3 hours was based on the idea that muscle protein synthesis only lasts a few hours after eating. But newer research shows the anabolic response to a meal can last much longer, especially with larger protein doses. You don't need to constantly drip feed amino acids into your system like an IV. So what's the actual sweet spot for protein if you want to lose fat? Here's what the research says. For general fitness and maintenance, about 1.4 to 1.6 grams per kilogram. For active muscle building in a calorie surplus, 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram. For fat loss in a moderate deficit, 1.8 to 2.4 grams per kilogram. If you're doing an aggressive diet with a big calorie deficit, you can push up to 2.8 grams per kilogram to preserve muscle. For an 80-kilogram person, that's roughly 140 to 200 grams of protein per day, depending on your goal. Not 300, not 250, and definitely not the 400 grams I've seen some people claim they need. One study really drives this home. Researchers put people in a 40% calorie deficit with intense training. One group ate 2.4 grams per kilogram of protein. The other ate 1.2. The higher protein group gained over a kilogram of lean mass while losing almost 5 kilograms of fat. The lower protein group just maintained muscle and lost 3.5 kilograms of fat. So yes, higher protein during a deficit helps, but higher meant 2.4 grams per kilogram, not double that. The real protein trap isn't that protein turns into sugar. It's that fitness culture has convinced you that you need ungodly amounts of it. You're spending money on protein powders you don't need. You're keeping insulin elevated all day with constant protein snacking. You're forcing your body to process and oxidize excess amino acids instead of burning fat. And you're probably not getting any additional muscle building benefit from it. Your body is not a more is better machine when it comes to protein. It's an optimization machine. It has a threshold where protein is incredibly useful, and beyond that threshold, you're just creating expensive, inefficient fuel that your body has to work hard to process. So here's what I want you to do. Calculate your actual protein needs based on your body weight and goals. For most people, that's somewhere between 1.6 and 2.2 grams per kilogram. Track your protein for a week and see where you actually land. If you're way over, try scaling back and see what happens. You might be surprised that you feel better, your digestion improves, and your fat loss actually accelerates. Protein is important. I'm not saying don't eat protein, but it's not magic, and more is not always better. The fitness industry sold you a story, and that story is costing you money and potentially costing you results. If this helped you rethink your protein intake, hit that subscribe button. I break down the actual science behind nutrition and fat loss so you can stop guessing and start seeing results. I'll catch you in the next one.